me, Damien. It's all for you.
I'm George.
I'm Devyn, and this is your 16th appointment with your Medicinema.
Before we talk about the Omen movies, we are gonna quickly discuss the acquisition of Alamo Drafthouse by Sony. Now, if you aren't a huge film nerd or an American, you probably aren't aware of Alamo, so Devyn, please enlighten us.
So the Alamo Drafthouse, as far as I know, they really care about movies over at the Alamo Drafthouse. It's a film theater where they make you turn off your phones. They're pretty anal about it. I think if you have your phone on, you get caught, you're banned for life. They're the kind of people that, like, if the film starts to green, like, or starts to yellow, they're gonna put, like, a green film over the bowl or some shit. They're gonna, like, adjust it. I don't know. They're just, like, super, super, super passionate about films. It's just a cool There's a bunch of them too, right? It's a chain now, I think, right?
I think 35 active locations and 3 closed ones that they already announced since the acquisition are gonna reopen. Yeah, the one thing that I know about it is that it's like it has a culinary focus as well. Like you have a pretty good kitchen and you can eat a fancy meal whilst watching the movie, basically.
It's a lot of places, yeah.
Yeah, but it's definitely like a fancy, classy cinema chain. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
And Sony bought it, which is kind of a historic moment because up until, I believe it was revoked in 2020. Yeah, November 2020. This wouldn't have been legal. This all leads back to, I think it was a 70-something-year-old law where the Department of Antitrust Division split up movie studios and movie chains. Back then, it was very much a situation where all the big studios had their own chains, and they would obviously give an unfair advantage within their own chains to their own movies. And in a big antitrust case, all of that was split up. It's like one of the biggest antitrust case moments, I believe, like in general law. And this was revoked in 2020. As far as I know, the explanation as to why it was revoked now is that there's way more options for movies to also release, and it's not that big of a potential issue anymore. Back then, cinemas were the only place to watch movies. You know, the TV didn't exist, streaming obviously didn't exist, video on demand, DVD, whatever, home releases didn't exist. So this was really the only exclusive place to watch movies. And I guess in 2020, they decided that with streaming, with video on demand, with DVDs, Blu-rays, whatever, that there are enough other options for movies to release that it isn't that much of a monopoly situation anymore if a studio owns a cinema chain.
Interesting. You know, in a lot of ways, I think that, you know, we talk box office a lot, budget versus box office a lot in general in the movie sphere. Have been thinking for a long time that it's not as reflective as it should be anymore because so many people watch movies not at the theater, you know?
Yeah, it's a very different game now. Where years later you will get the news that that movie that you thought was a flop was actually like pretty successful because it was super popular in home releases, which is a rare occurrence but still happens. You know, that's like The Northman was considered a big flop at the cinemas. And I don't know what studio is behind it. I can't quite remember, but I remember specifically that they once made the announcement of, oh, we actually made quite a lot of money with it because the 4K release was super popular of the Northman. So yeah, it's super hard to judge nowadays.
Yeah. And so like, I don't really know, how much that really will hurt. You know, and also I was gonna say what you said is like the opposite too. When you see a movie and you know years later you find out that movie was a flop, and you were like, what? but
Mhm.
that's a beloved movie. Well, yeah, because people end up liking it and loving it on streaming, but it didn't do well in theaters because, uh, whatever
Bad
marketing's all
marketing.
kinds of,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because a person is so much more willing and likely to watch a movie at home than they are to take the time, effort, and money that it takes to go to a movie theater and see a movie in a movie theater. They tend to be a lot more picky about what they watch in a theater. So if it doesn't have the marketing, doesn't have the push, it's not going to do the same.
Mhm.
But so I think having a company have its own theaters is not really going to affect it as much. I kind of agree with that, right?
Mhm.
I think my problem is wondering what this gentrification to the indie theater is. The Alamo is basically at its core a more independent version of Cinetopia. Cinetopia here in the US is a chain where you can sit down, order food, sit at tables, there's couches, and they, kind of take the movies a little more seriously. But it's a
Okay.
chain thing, right? And it's
Mhm.
very much very like chain based, and it's not ever been like a mom and pop or whatever. It seems like the Alamo has kind of branched out and become kind of a chain, but it still tries to hold on to that like
Prestige.
we're an indie movie theater. Yeah, exactly, right? And this is just now a company buying that and doing that. And we've seen this 100 times over in 100 different industries where you have this grassroots type of product or movement, and then it gets bought out, and then it's just, it loses that after so many years.
Mhm.
So I wonder what this is going to just do to indie theaters as a whole, more than I wonder what it will do to
Just Alamo.
because what's going to happen is other film companies are going to want to jump on this, right? They're going to want to also start owning
Owning
theaters.
chains. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. I don't know how scared they are of like the market of the literal cinema market, specifically. For some years, there was that moment where every studio wanted to own a streaming service because they thought all the chains are gonna die. They are pushing back on that now with, Warner Bros. Not making exclusive streaming releases anymore and putting it all back into this theater before going onto Max. But still, I wonder if there's too much fear for some studios to also jump on and buy some chains now.
I like when the WB stuff went to Max. I'm sad about that, actually. But I know exactly what you mean. I'm about to, as you know, live near theaters again and have access to theaters. And one of the theaters I'm able to go to, and it's basically the same thing as Alamo. It's like they have like a restaurant, and it's alcohol, and it's a 21 and up only theater. And
Sounds lovely. From a cinema chain founded in 1997, we move on to The Omen, a film released in 1976 by Richard Donner, starring Lee Remick and Gregory Peck. We start off the plot with Robert and Catherine Thorne in the hospital and the reveal that their newborn baby died. However, another baby's mother just died giving birth at the same time, so Robert lets the doctor talk him into switching the baby secretly behind Catherine's back and adopt Damien, the other child, as their own. After a time skip, we follow the strange happenings surrounding the family, including the suicide by the nanny, a mysterious new nanny showing up to fill the empty position, and the appearance of a black Rottweiler protecting Damien. Through the help of a local priest, it is slowly revealed to Robert and us that Damien is the Antichrist himself, with it all culminating in a big standoff between him and his adoptive father. Devyn, this wasn't your first time watching The Omen, was it?
no, I'd seen this movie when I was quite the young fella, and certain things about this movie had stood out to me and had made me like excited to rewatch it as a grown person. And then I rewatched it as a grown person. And it's one of those things where it was just better in memory, I think.
Yeah, I wonder. Do you have memories of being scared specifically back then? Did this like hit you with like less experience in horror with a younger age?
There's some certain scenes in the movie that just stick with me visually because of the way they play out. I may have seen another Omen or maybe the remake, but I think I've seen another Omen, and I think there's some scenes in that one that are like homages slash callbacks to scenes in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of blend. And I think the scenes I mentioned that I would mention are the ones that we'll talk about because they're
Okay.
the ones that kind of stand out in this film, you know? I wouldn't say scared. This was probably the first movie that I watched where religion was a tool for horror.
Okay.
And I was mostly just confused because I didn't grow up with this religion in any way.
Mm. So not even like tangentially you knew people who were Christian and due to them.
I mean, there's like one staunchly Christian person in my family, and that's like about it.
Okay. I grew up in a Christian family. Everyone in my near surroundings was Christian. There's obviously differences with how much certain people really lived by that and how many of them were just like, going to church on Christmas Eve because it's the important day, and for the rest of the year they aren't really Christian, but it stands on their certificate or whatever. I'm very familiar with all of this. And in recent years, in particular, I have watched a lot of cinema that is in conversation with Christianity, and specifically, mostly critically in conversation with Christianity. I gotta say, I don't identify as Christian anymore. I consider myself, I guess, an agnostic atheist. there's this beautiful line by the essayist We're in Hell. When he says he means he's an agnostic atheist, he means that on the one hand he doesn't believe in any of it, on the other hand he also likes to be pretentious about certain spiritual sides of life. So that's pretty much me. I like that.
Is that basically Schrodinger's religion?
I guess so. So going into these, because I have never seen any of the Omen movies, going into these, I kind of expected to be really into it. I tend to not be the biggest horror fan on average, and it usually takes some sort of additional thing to get me interested, some hook to really pull me in. And I expected, this whole relation to Christianity and how, since it is a horror film, it would probably, use Christianity to create some of that horror.
And it doesn't.
Yeah, I didn't really get that out of it.
Well, it makes up its own shit, first off. It's not even really basing anything in actual, like, Christian stuff. Which, to me is fine. You talk about Christian horror in general, and, like, Dante's Inferno, Paradise Lost. That's, like, a quick one to jump to, right? That's not in any Bible. That's like a religious work of fiction that came later. And there's a lot of those, like seraphims and all those kind of like the like levels of angels and levels of hell and all that kind of stuff. It's all like Christian mythology already. So it doesn't bother me too much that it's made up. But I think my big issue with this is that it's not like, it's just not scary. I don't even think this is a horror movie.
Yeah.
I once was on Hulu, and me and my wife wanted to find a horror, and we were looking in the horror section. For the Europeans, Hulu is the adult side of Disney Plus.
Yeah.
We were looking for a horror movie, and there is Parasite, and we didn't know anything about Parasite, and we were like, oh, that looks crazy, let's watch it. And Parasite, as anybody who's seen it is not a horror film. So it was very badly placed in a bad genre. This movie isn't even in the horror section on Hulu. It's on the drama section. And when I first saw that, I was like, man, Hulu really sucks at this, putting its things in the right genres. And by the end time I watched it, I was like, no, that was a drama film.
Yeah.
That was a drama movie with some thriller elements a little bit, kind of.
A vaguely scary drama movie.
It's a drama movie with some like hardcore deaths. And that's about it, yeah.
I'm trying to think of what were like the big scary horror films before this. I'm trying to compare it with, I guess Exorcist was before this, right? This was 73.
There's tons of movies that are way scarier than this and before this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shit. It was a different era, but Invasion of the Body Snatchers was way scarier for its time than this movie was.
Mm-hmm.
Psycho was way scarier for its time than this was. You know what it is? It's gothic drama almost, in which it's using religion as its vehicle to be gothic. I just don't think this movie was even meant to be a horror movie.
I think it was meant to be, yeah. It's kind of the situation where I think we might speak similarly of current day horror movies that aren't like, there's PG horror movies now, There's, I don't know if Smile has a R rating, for example. There's like these certain horror films that are targeted to a wider audience still, but are still supposed to be a horror film. They are just like not that scary. And I would assume that this is kind of a similar situation for its time. Like, this was definitely meant for a wide audience, and it succeeded at that. Like, it was a very, very successful movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I would still think it was considered a horror film, just not an extreme one at the time.
That's fair. And it even says supernatural horror on some of these parts. It says supernatural horror. It's a lot of the ways it's described.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't impressed with it on this rewatch. Like, again, there's some parts. There's a few parts that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Really early out the gate in the film, I think it's probably the most memorable scene. The nanny hanging herself. And just so joyfully, it's all for you, Damien. And like, that's one thing that stuck with me as a kid. That's kind of in its own way terrifying, to think that somebody could be so like enrobed with a person that they're like a child. Like, it's, I was that like really small demographic that watched this movie that was like, what do you mean he's the devil? Like, like, I didn't see that coming. So that was really fucked up for her to do that. I was like confused why she would do this. And that was scary.
Yeah, even before that, I actually have a note on the opening credits, because I loved the image so much. There's this silhouette of, I guess, Damien, of a boy standing there, and his shadow just makes the shadow of a crucifix. And that was just a beautiful, beautiful image next to the opening credits. Other than that, my first note was on the cinematography. I was pretty impressed by that. It's a very simple but slick cinematography. It's like constantly somewhat in motion. It's always more elaborate than it needs to be, but at the same time doesn't really attract attention to itself. Like, it's not over stylized in any way. It almost has it reminded me of a kind of Spielberg-esque quality in the way it was filmed. And that really stood out to me. That was very beautifully done.
I was literally looking at the Wikipedia page where you said that, and I expected you to finish that sentence with, and his shadow makes an image of a wolf, because that's what's on the poster. And I was like, it's the dumbest looking wolf I've ever seen. They had that really great image in the film, but this is what they decided to market with.
It's weird.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to the cinematography that deeply about it. I think it's
like in a similar way to, early Spielberg stuff, where it's not like that I would pause the movie and be like, oh man, this is stunning, and get like a still and would put it as a poster on the wall. But it is all more detailed, and there's more attention to the way scenes are blocked, and the scene is in movement, and the camera is in movement in relation to that, than there would need to be. It all has like this extra level of attention without being super in your face with it. It's still just mostly like meant to be serviceable to the story, but they still put some effort into it, and that's what I recognized.
Apparently the little kid in this movie, right? Clearly this was his first movie. And I was like, oh, what else did he play in? and it doesn't really tell you. He played in like one or two other things, but he also has been to prison like a bunch of
Oh no.
times. Yeah, that's what I was like, oh shit.
I read a
He's-
weird trivia about his casting that kind of fits
Oh, tell
into
me,
that.
yeah.
The thing he made every kid do was attack the actor, like that played the father. and he just liked the way he was super aggressive towards him.
He's just much better about it, about being fucking
Yeah, being a monster.
little jerk.
So apparently that kind of fits.
Okay, I've seen a lot of like this little kid's evil movies. You know what I mean? That's like a trope. I've seen many times, right?
I don't think that's like what they intended to cast an actual evil kid, or that they ever tried to market it as our kid was really evil. I'm just saying apparently the scene with which he cast them was around, the scene where he attacks the father. So I thought that was funny.
When I started the movie and I saw him, I was like, oh, that's the kid. He just doesn't look that like, I don't know, he doesn't look that evil to me.
Mm.
He just looks like the lead singer of AC/DC. I'm looking at like all the other actors that have played Damien, this character, in other Omen films, television series, other things like that. And there's a lot of evil looking kids here. And then then there's that one, and I'm like, oh.
To move on in the plot a bit,
Yes.
we have that character, the photographer, and his development booth, what do you call it?
Dark room.
Picture lab, dark room. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lit in red light, and I thought that was very interesting because the moment I saw that, the red lit room, and how obviously the color red with blood and stuff like that perfectly fits into this world of horror, and with pictures specifically, and seeing details in pictures that you wouldn't have seen with your naked eye, that becoming kind of a trope in it of itself. I am kind of surprised that the dark room with its red light isn't more of a horror trope nowadays.
That's like the color a dark room is. Like if you work in a
Yeah,
dark
I
room,
know,
it's always
I know.
yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna look that up. Keep going though. Keep going.
In my experience, the cliche of seeing something in the picture that wasn't visible to the naked eye is super present everywhere. But to me, just the imagery of combining it with the dark room, I don't know. I would expect to see way more often, but maybe I just missed out on it.
Actually, by the way, I did find a list. A short, like, I'm not going to read the whole list or anything, but 1 hour photo, Shutter, Darkness, The Ring, The Faculty, Red Dragon. The original It has a big dark room
Does
scene.
it? I can't even remember it.
Arachnophobia. There's actually quite a lot. Not enough to make it a good enough trope, I could definitely see it being used better more often. But it is there. Because you're right, it's totally a good, like, naturally good look. Okay, so what's the next thing that happens to him? They go do that, and then somebody dies right after that, right?
The zoo happens first.
Okay, yeah.
Where I wanted to ask you, are those drive-through zoos still a thing? Do they exist? I only know them from movies.
So, yeah. So they usually call them nature reserves. And yeah, you can drive through them. My wife's actually been to a couple, and she's been to ones that have like lions and cool shit, and giraffes and stuff, right? She's been to those, and when you can like the giraffes will stick their heads through the window and whatnot. But yeah, no, it's very much a real thing.
Interesting.
This is not a thing in Europe, I take it.
Maybe in some other places. I just have never been to one. There are some pretty well-known zoos in Austria that I've also been to as a child and so on. But none of these, at least, have anything comparable to that, where you literally drive into the enclosure or stuff like that.
It's not usually like an enclosure you're driving into. It's a nature preserve, so it's an open air habitat. it's definitely a little bit different. But that being said, this is in the UK, isn't it? This movie's in the Europe already, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird because also parts are supposed to take place in Rome, I think, of the Omen. And I never understood when they were supposed to be in Rome. Is like what's supposed to take place here in Rome? Because nothing here looks like Rome ever.
Well, I mean, yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all. No, you know what? That's right. Okay, so he's American.
Mm-hmm.
That's confusing. She, I think, is British. I remember this section. He comes home and he's like, "Did you tell the American ambassador?" Blah 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 blah. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Did you tell?" Because I'm the American ambassador now. So the American diplomat Robert Thorne and his wife Catherine are living in Rome when Catherine gives birth to a boy. 5 years later, they're now living. He's the American ambassador to the United Kingdom in London. Okay. So they moved to London.
So just
for the rest of the film.
Hospital scene in the beginning is supposed to be in Rome. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Just to pass off that devil baby.
Yeah. They quickly went to Rome to pick up the Antichrist, and then they were like, okay, let's go to Britain now.
I mean,
who wouldn't?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know where
that's so fucking it's so fucking funny. Who wouldn't? Oh shit. Oh man. So yeah, the zoo, it's such a nothing happens moment. Like it leads up. It feels like something's gonna happen, and it's like some giraffe runaway.
Yeah, and some baboons, I guess, are implied to be semi-aggressive towards the car, but it's also like you can kind of see that they are just running back and forth, I guess. They got them to run back and forth and they are just cutting. Yeah. Like it never felt like any baboon is actually trying to attack the car.
I do want to touch on the this movie, taught me a little known fact that, dogs will protect the devil. Cats are afraid of the Antichrist. Giraffes, naturally afraid of the Antichrist. Baboons, warriors of God, willing to try to kill the Antichrist. Did not know that until I saw this film.
That's official Christian law now.
It is.
It's gonna be the new book in the Bible. Third Testament.
And though the baboon do turn cheek and slice your face open.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens after they go there. Something's happening with the wife. You know what the dumbest thing? I watched this today.
I watched it yesterday.
Yeah. That's how forgettable the events of this movie kind of are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's moments that are memorable, but like the actual series of the events aren't even that memorable for me.
The next note I wrote down is that I realized that the photographer has also the same red color on his clothing, which I thought was cute.
As Damien?
No, as the darkroom lighting itself.
Oh, okay.
And I think like that because the photographer is part of how they solve it all using the pictures and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I thought that maybe the red color as a whole is supposed to represent the making the Antichrist visible or making the bad things visible. So I thought it was cute that the photographer itself has the red light on him because he's the person who makes it all visible.
Okay. The nanny that just like appears?
Mm-hmm.
Really? They're just gonna like...
Yeah, I mean, she had that explanation of the agency sent a new one. So if they really booked the first nanny through an agency, that would explain it all away.
I know, but they're like, we're gonna check that though. And she's like, okay, well, here's my credentials. And they're like, all right, well, we're gonna call them. And they never do. And later he mentions it again. He's like, I'm gonna double check that. And she's like, all right. And he never does. This could have all been avoided if you just fucking... This is mad crazy how well she just jumped into their lives.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so there we go. Frightens the Animal Safari Park. Okay. Pregnant. Man, nothing happens in this movie, dude. It's just people talking and not even about interesting things. There we go. That's another memorable moment, I guess, is her falling off the foyer and like having the miscarriage because of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of
Yeah,
stood
I
out to me
have
as a
something
kid.
right before that, because there is all of a sudden they open up the big topic of abortion like halfway through the movie without any real relation to that early on. And I was kind of surprised by that, because not only do they tackle or address that topic in 76, it's kind of a pro-abortion movie if you think about it, that their only child is the Antichrist. And I wouldn't even say like pro-choice movie. No, it's a pro-abortion movie. It's a anti-children movie.
I mean, yeah, all demon children movies are anti-children movies for sure.
Yeah. But I thought it was super funny when they like just dropped the possibility of abortion and addressed that topic, and then it made me think of, okay, what is this movie's stance then? And yeah, it's very extremely one-sided, and that in 76.
I was like kind of confused why Father Brennan wanted her to have abortion and like why he was like, you got to get rid of that child, even though Damien was the demon child. I don't really understand. And then Damien like still gets it killed, still forces her to have a miscarriage.
No, I don't think he wanted it, right? It was the psychiatrist who wanted to have a talk with the father, and it was like, look, your wife is kind of crazy. She believes your child isn't her child and that the child is evil, and she is not in the state to have another one.
And he was warning that Damien was going to kill it if he didn't be careful.
Yeah. When the actual incident with the mother happens, where she falls down, she loses the child, she's like laying in hospital.
Yes.
Damien drives a tricycle in the moment that she's like startled and falls over. Imagery wise, it's very much the tricycle scene of The Shining. I wonder if that is kind of a quote back to the Omen, because it's very, very similar in the way it's all framed with the long carpet in the hallway and this little boy just going at it in the tricycle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think what's his face with the K
Kubrick.
name? Yeah, Kubrick. I don't think he was above homages or anything.
Mm.
The whole her death is kind of a good scene that ages really badly. It's like they tried to like it look like she really hits the floor, but it honestly would have just been better if it cut away because it just looks so terrible when she hits. And then, like I said, Father Brennan dies pretty shortly after that with the falling lightning rod off the church building or whatever it is, off the building, and impales him.
Yeah.
That scene, I thought in my memory as a kid, was way more intense than it was this watch around.
It still was somewhat intense. Like one of the more intense moments in the movie for sure. I think there's only really one moment that like was really intense in this whole thing. It's very much towards the end, and one of my last notes that I have, it's the decapitation with the glass pane.
Oh my god, who was it that gets decapitated again?
I think the photographer.
Yeah, it's the photographer, you're right. Yeah, that was a great scene.
There's also one more imagery where I think there might be an homage to something else, or like something else is homaging this. I don't fully remember the context. It might have been on the graveyard where they are trying to check the grave of the mother of Damien, the actual biological mother. And you have those POV shots of what then gets revealed to be Rottweilers. But the way it is filmed very much reminded me of the way Sam Raimi filmed the POV shots of the evil, I guess. So like these very handheld looking through from the distance at the protagonists, like through a tree or something. It's very much the same kind of cinematography, the same kind of framing that Sam Raimi used a few years later in 81 for the Evil Dead. So that might be another way this movie influenced horror, at least, even if we don't fully consider it horror
Yeah.
itself.
No, I mean, I definitely think it fits. It does fit horror in a lot of ways. It just doesn't fit what we normally use, the normal conventions of horror now.
Yeah, what you would expect nowadays going into a horror film. Yeah.
We're going to get into this again later with the next movie because there's so much more to talk about the next movie in correlation to this movie. How long into this adventure would it have taken you to just kill the damn kid?
I don't think I had that thought with this here.
You never went, I would have already done it?
No, I don't think so.
That's good of you. I mean, you would have led the apocalypse and ruined the lives of everyone on the planet.
I don't know. The movie didn't invite me in that way to like put myself into his shoes and think of it that way. Like if I was in his shoes, I would definitely have killed it at some point, I assume. I just never... The movie didn't engage me in the level to make me think of it in that way.
It's definitely not a when would I kill this kid kind of thought-provoking movie. It's much more of the like, should I have pizza or doner later type of thought-provoking movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's something to that.
Yeah, it was on, they were eating at one point and you were like, that sounds good. Think about that.
It's more of the, if you watch it at Alamo Drafthouse, you're thinking about the next course you're gonna order movies.
Yeah, exactly. Nice callback. We're not sponsored by Alamo Drafthouse, but we'd love to be.
We'll take your money.
The birthmark with the 3 6s like swirling around each other. I do kind of like that little design. Very cool, very simple, very evil. Yeah, I like that.
I read that apparently that wasn't like a popular pop culture, the association of 666 being the devil up until this movie. Like it was already in written material and the connection did exist, but the wider audience didn't associate it with it. It wasn't well known, that association. And that movie really made that famous.
That's kind of cool. I just on the side was like, I clicked that because it was right in front of me, 666. In most manuscripts, the New Testament translates the beast as 666. But Papyrus 115, which is the oldest preserved manuscript of the Revelation, as well as other sources such as the Codex Ephraim Recepticus, give the number of the beast as 616 and not 666.
Interesting.
So it is a mistranslation that we just go with, much like like the apple. It was not an apple. It was most likely a pomegranate.
Interesting. I never heard that one. So the apple in like the paradise with Adam and Eve was a pomegranate?
Yeah. And if you look in a lot of older paintings too, like much older paintings, it's often painted as a pomegranate. And then for some reason we like, at some point, I don't know who, but somebody repainted it as an apple.
Yeah, some fucking Italian.
I was almost felt a personal disdain for the Italians right there. Damn, I don't know what happened.
It's really more a personal disdain for the way European Christians kind of rewrote a lot of European history. There was a lot of loss of history due to Christianity kind of taking over all of Europe. So it was part of that.
That's fair. Movie pretty much ends right after, he tries to kill the kid. Cannot kill the kid because the police come in and are like, hey, you're a kid killer, and they kill him, as one would do. And then we see Damien one more time at the funeral, and he turns and he smiles at the camera, and we're like, he lived. We're all gonna die. I didn't catch this. According to Wikipedia, at the funeral, he is standing and he's attended by the U.S. president and the first lady, who are now the caretakers and foster parents of Damien. And that's what Damien turns and smiles. I didn't catch that implication in any way. I don't know if you did.
I caught the implication that it was supposed to be the president and the first lady. I thought it was like a little forced. I don't think the whole political side of the story gets explored enough for it all to matter. Like there's this side where, it's implied that due to Damien growing up with this politically important person, he as the Antichrist would have more options, more possibilities, whatever. But I don't know. Like it's one of the opening sentences they establish that he is an ambassador, and the first things you establish should be the big themes, and they should matter really throughout the story. And I guess it matters in the end again for a second there with the president, but not really. What did we learn due to him being a politician? He might as well have been a rich investment banker. It wouldn't have changed anything.
They mention at one point that Damien will be a powerful politician at one point. They like foresee it that he'll become a politician. I forget who it is that says that to him.
Yeah, so I guess they are making a commentary that politicians are evil. Okay.
Well, no, I think that's I don't know if that's like an actual religious thing or if it's just a trope. But I'm fairly certain that the idea that like the Antichrist will be in politics is like a thing. And
okay.
I think I could be really wrong.
I have one little trivia thing left. They didn't have the money to pay Gregory Peck, the main actor, the wage that he asked for, but they really wanted him. So they offered him 10% of the revenue, which then kind of accidentally turned into the biggest pay that an actor has had to this point, with him earning over $6 million and the best paid role on the career of Gregory Peck. So that worked out.
But you know what? This is a lot of time to spend on this movie. We could definitely move on to the next one. You're completely right.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to The First Omen.
The First Omen is the debut film of Arkasha Stevenson and a prequel to the 1976 film The Omen. The film follows Margaret Dino, played by Nell Tiger Free, a young American novitiate as she arrives in Rome. While waiting to take the veil, she meets Carlita, a mysterious orphan played by Italian actress Nicole Sirace. With the help of a shady priest played by Ralph Ineson, Margaret works to uncover the unholy truth about her destiny. What did you think about this prequel and how it fit into the original?
The thing I enjoyed most about this movie was, again, the cinematography, but the disparity between how much I enjoyed the cinematography and how little I cared about the story was even bigger here.
Damn.
The cinematography actually stood out enough to me that I looked up who it was and if I know some other work by this guy. And yeah, the cinematographer is the same cinematographer of movies like the 2013 Evil Dead remake and also that lovely teen horror love story Spontaneous.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, Aaron Morton from New Zealand is the cinematographer. And the cinematography, I gotta say, is really stunning. All of the production design, this feels like Rome, like through and through. This felt very much like the real thing. It's, they actually filmed on locations. There's beautiful sets. If they have sets, then it's beautifully built sets. The costumes are great.
Again, the first 30 seconds of the original Omen take place in Rome, and that's it. So it shouldn't feel like Rome.
Fair enough. But still, like, just looking at this from the perspective of this is a very recent movie horror film that is just, trying to cash in on established IP, and those films tend to feel cheap. I don't know, in the production. And this all, like, my biggest compliments here go to the production design, to the cinematography, all of the things that usually feel cheap in those kind of movies. And this one absolutely doesn't. Like, this feels high quality in that sense. That being said, I don't know. The story, I have big problems with this film. I still think it's a pretty good movie. I wasn't appalled by this, I guess. But
Yeah.
it was just very down the middle.
I liked this movie. I think a lot more than the other one.
Really?
Yeah, and we'll get to some of those things for sure. I guess, without going too far into this, we mentioned the red herring earlier that this movie possesses. And, we'll get into what exactly that is, but I actually really liked that. I fell into the comfort that this movie was going to be straightforward. Just here it is, cut and dry. You're going to watch this fucking experience and, you already know what's going to happen in the next one type thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for them to like throw that, it's a twist into there, really, I liked that. Because I didn't expect it, I was lulled into the mediocrity and surprised by the even just most modest amount of creative writing. So that was not bad. I didn't mind that.
Yeah, that was totally okay. That worked. The red herring worked.
Much like the other movie, this movie does for me in a lot of ways kind of just ride on those very few little moments for me, or I guess the big moments. And I think the first one comes right out the gate is the homage to Brennan's death. Father Brennan in the first movie, in the original Omen, died from the lightning rod coming down on top of him, right?
Yes.
Which is an interesting thing. But in this movie, he watches Father Harris die in almost an identical way.
Yeah.
Way more gory, way more visceral, fucking the head open, cool fucking effect thing going on. But a really, really interesting little homage to the first one. I like that they came out right out the gate with that.
Yeah, it's interesting in the beginning because I was super here for this movie in the first few minutes. Even before that, I wrote down a few notes of like, this imagery is so nice. Love the shot of her breathing through the black hood that they put over her face.
Mm-hmm.
The shots in the confessional booth between the priests, those were super pretty. And yeah, then this clear homage to the original that still had kind of its own twist to it and its own way of portraying that kind of scene, with even the, it's cut in this way where he turns around and you see the split open head all of a sudden, and he just then cuts to his face and he just smiles as this ethereal music starts playing, and it's a great contrast of audio to visual, and yeah, super, super interesting tonality to open on. And I was really here for this, which made some of the later quote-unquote homages super frustrating to me, but I guess we'll get to that.
I think I know what homage you're talking about, and yep. You jump from this really awesome, well done, kill, is the horror people who love their kills, but then, like you said, really, really great juxtaposition of the audio visual.
Mm-hmm.
Just a great overall scene. And then you're jumped scared to Bill Nye as a priest, and that just was fucked up. I was like, what? You can't make Bill Nye a priest and not expect him to be evil, like right out there. Oh, well, he's a bad guy. That's
kind of true.
I just saw him and was like, I can't not see him and not see him as the dad from Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
just like a not good guy who's gonna turn into a zombie and try to eat you later.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of the first things he says to the main character is, I always knew you were destined for great things. And I'm just like, man, this movie's just foreshadowing so hard. Right? It's like it knew. It's like we all know what movie comes after this because it's a prequel. So we're gonna wear those foreshadows on our sleeve. The whole film is a fucking foreshadow.
Yeah.
So we might as well just like lean into it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of hate that kind of super obvious on the nose prequel humor.
I don't even know if it's humor. I think it's just that they don't give a shit, or it's just bad writing. I don't think they're actually purposely leaning into foreshadowing, because the whole movie's a foreshadowing. I'm more just talking shit about the movie.
Yeah. If it was meant as that, it is bad. If it was not meant as that, it's also not good.
It's also bad. Yeah. So, it just wasn't good overall.
No.
Yeah.
There's no good explanation as to why they would have wrote that in.
It caused me pain. It's been a while since I watched it, therefore I've turned it into comedy.
The whole party sequence comes up. I guess it is hinted on early on that this one nun, this one friend of hers, is kind of the, I don't know, cheeky ones, the kind of plays around a bit more and isn't as strict. I guess they allure to that, but still, the moment we cut to her, the protagonist, standing in front of the mirror, being all dressed up and in this kind of sexy dress outfit for the night, it felt super out of left hand, out of nowhere. It just felt like all of a sudden I switched the movie. The tonality switch just didn't work at all to me. It wasn't like, I didn't feel like it was meant as a harsh tonality switch, because that could also be cool. That can happen in movies where all of a sudden you're in a very different situation and then you figure out, okay, as to why it switched so hard. It just felt like all of a sudden there's a different movie playing and it had no reason at all. I don't know. That cut felt awkward and weird and undeserved. I don't know how to put it, but yeah.
Them going to party just in general?
Yeah.
And like the whole party sequence?
Even before that, specifically the cut from her just having I don't know what it was exactly before that, but it was a very much I am a nun, I am doing nun things right now scene to cut, she's standing in front of the mirror being all sexy, dressed up, ready to go partying. Like that was
I mean, she was very apprehensive about being sexy. She wasn't like comfortable with herself.
I guess a few seconds into that scene, yeah, they address it, but I don't know. It felt so weird to me. I can't even tell you why.
It is weird that it goes from like, we're in Rome and we're being religious and Bill Nye's our fucking over priest and shit, to jumping to be like, welcome to Prague and we're at the disco. And like it is a jump.
Yeah.
But
I feel like there's something missing in between, as if it was just cut out. Like some scene of the girl, the other nun trying to get her to come along, and is like, I don't know. Look, I even got this really beautiful dress for you. You're gonna love it. Something. I don't know.
I mean, I thought they did. I thought there was a preempt. I thought pretty sure she was like, we're gonna go out.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt so abrupt to me. I can't tell you why.
That's fair.
It really
fair.
annoyed me. This might be a case of, I heard that Disney has already done that where they re-edited a movie and then put it on their streaming platform. So this might be honestly like a doctored version that I watched. I don't know. It felt super weird. I have nothing to base this accusation on, really.
You don't remember that? You don't remember that whole scene where they just trash talk Austria?
Yeah, no, that didn't happen. Odd.
I'm totally joking.
Yeah, that huge 10-minute sequence in the middle.
Yeah, just the Romans just being like, they fucking think their architecture is so good.
Yeah, and fuck Mozart.
Yeah. We're the pretty gold city, not them.
This went way off the rails.
Yeah, it was so stupid.
Plot-wise, however, after the party and still before the birth scene that you want to get at, is when the priest approaches her in public the first time. And this is the moment I realized this movie has kind of gone off the rails for me, that I'm not fully with it anymore the way I was in the beginning. Because I wrote down, initially I liked how it is a very modern way to adapt the same kind of structure. it is almost like a straight up drama for the first 15-ish minutes before the first hint of horror element even comes into play. It's somewhat similar here, with a lot of backstory and a lot of, character development early on. And I thought that was, up until this point, very tastefully done with the way they do put homages to the original in there and clear references to the Omen in there, but it's all been very much its own modern version of this all and didn't feel too derivative. And this was the moment this really changed for me. When the priest approaches her in public, it's like comically the same scene. Oh, we're doing this again. There's this one priest that got, like, I guess, excommunicated out of the group of priests.
I mean, it's the same priest.
I don't even care for that it is the same priest. I just mean, like, as in...
I was like, it's literally the same priest. Of course he's been executed. He's still the same guy.
Yeah, sure. I don't care for that. Like, the technicality of him being this literal same person plot-wise for this moment. What I mean specifically is that from a story perspective, even the same person can do a thing differently in two different times of their life. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me. I just meant the scene is the exact same scene of The Omen. It's pretty much the exact same dialogue. It's the same situation and setup of some priest approached her in public. This is weird. Why is he talking to me? Oh, this guy must be crazy. He's talking about the Antichrist. It's the exact same thing. There's no difference to the original. They didn't put any effort in, okay, we are gonna make our own version of this. We are gonna make our own, I don't know, modernized version of it. We're gonna put it into context of current problems and issues or anything. Nothing. It was the same scene. And that's kind of the movie for quite a while from this point on, up until, for sure, the final sequences are original for sure, and not at all what the original was. But for like the next third of the full runtime, I feel like this movie is so derivative and has so little to say on its own. I don't know.
I will say, I didn't love this movie. I'm not going to go out and say I really love this movie or anything like that. But I'll back it up here a little bit. Hold on. Something I like that they incorporate a lot in this movie, just randomly, be it that these nuns are forked tongue, devil belly licking, demon loving women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, that's established. We see a lot of them being people, which I think isn't unrealistic. At one point, they have like a trampoline and they're like singing, and like at one point they're like at dinner and they're having all these conversations and shit, and it almost like is a dirty conversation at one point. I forget what they're talking about, and it's embarrassing to one of the sisters or whatever, and it's really funny. I know that that's not like a big part of the movie. It's not like a pushing of the plot or anything like that's not even like a groundbreaking thing or whatever, but it's something that I liked, that I thought gave this movie its own identity in a way, was how much it focused on the nunnery aspect of this of it, and I liked that actually. I kind of enjoyed seeing that throughout the film.
Yeah, the setting and having the focus literally play out of the perspective of a nun, that works, and the characters are well developed in that regard. Yeah,
it's so easy to portray nuns as like knuckle slapping, angry, finger poking ladies, and that they were more than that here, and I liked that. That being said, it was because they were evil, sinner, dances with the devils type people. But
I think my issue with that is something that I kind of alluded to earlier on. I have seen a lot of films that are handling Christian subjects in a critical way and questioning those kind of structures of and a lot about nuns and stuff like that. So I just have seen quite a few movies where nuns both feel like real people and also with real issues and with sexuality and stuff like that. And also, I have also seen films that are very comical and over the top with those kind of settings. So I don't know. I guess that didn't affect me in that much because I just have seen similar explorations before.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not as versed with that at all. Yeah, you're not wrong. She meets that guy. By the way, I want to bring up that just for a second because we're going to come back to that later.
Oh yeah.
When she's out
In the
drinking
party.
with Luz, she meets the dude, Paolo, and then so we're going to move on to her liking Carlita, our red herring. Love that. I'm not gonna lie, still really like that. That's a whole thing, and we see that Carlita and Angelica are like people together, and that is when Angelica does the thing, and she's like, "It's all for you," and she does her homage to the original Omen and does the hanging. Hated it.
Yeah,
Man,
I
I
hated
hated
it too.
that scene. God, I hated that scene. The first one is great because it ties Father Brennan back in again. It's its own thing. It has its own way of doing it, but it's still, the act of things falling from the sky or whatever. This is just her doing the same thing, but she's also on fire.
Yeah, for no
This
reason.
This is like what my 5-year-old son would be like. How do you make your skateboard trick cooler? You do it on fire.
Yeah,
it's just,
exactly.
Put rockets on it. It's just
it's a comical understanding of how to take something and make it more extreme. It is
literally
yeah. That was exactly what I meant with the priest approaching early on. Like that to me already felt like that. This is obviously even more outrageous, this scene, but already with the priest I had that exact feeling, and this scene with her literally saying the same line of "it's all for you" in the same setting of a bunch of children are around and it's like a big courtyard. They are all having fun and playing. She's standing there almost like presented on a stage on the big house, jumping off after saying "it's all for you." It's so comically the same thing without any new ideas, and just added this super childish exaggeration to it that makes no sense at all. Yeah, this was just nothing.
There are ways that I think you could have made it better.
Instantly, I would have the idea, like, it would be weird in this movie because it's all very much out of the perspective of one person. But if this film, for example, was shot not from one central view, you could have that scene kind of play out from the perspective of the woman killing herself. Then you wouldn't see it coming, and you would kind of her stepping out onto that balcony. Only then you would make the connection of, oh, we're doing this. And you see it from another perspective and you have a different point of view of the same thing, then that would change things around. It would make it a different experience. For example, that would instantly be something that would make it interesting to me.
I could see that literally the way it being shot. You're following her from the back, stabilized camera on her as she's walking, and following her go up the steps or whatever, up the ladder to the tower, all the kind of shit or whatever it is, right? Grab the rope, and then the camera stops, right, following, and just stabilizes as she walks forward toward and out the window, and you just hear the "it's all for you." See her jump out of frame and the camera just stays looking out the window or something.
You might even have it in a way where the camera then zooms to a close-up just further in the back of the children reacting or something like that. Like it writes itself. You could it really does. It's so easy, and it would be a different.
It's It's funny too because in my first immediate, I went the other way. I went less cinematic, and I went more like, okay, how can you lean in the same way it did in the first way, where we saw the splitting of the brain open, right, in the first homage. How can you do that more hardcore here? Well, so what if she goes through in the first one, she hangs herself, she slams through the glass, and you see that other woman right inside. How much more hardcore would it be if she hangs herself? Realistically, now we know in life when a person hangs themselves, they don't often die immediately. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
If she was to swing back through the glass and the broken glass fucks her up, and then you just see her like struggling as like the glass is like lacerating her, and this woman is trying to help her get out of the window or whatever. Like you could definitely escalate it more violently to the other direction.
Yeah, true.
Maybe the rope breaks and she falls through, and like she gets decapitated through the window, much like a double homage. Do you know what I mean? Using the window to decapitate that guy. Like there's all kinds of ways you could have gone with this. Just, yeah, lighting her on fire, the absolute most lame way.
Yeah, so stupid. So stupid. Oh my god.
Just as a way to go, lighting yourself on fire and then hanging yourself is just a lot of extra work and pain for something I don't understand.
Yeah, that doesn't add, like she has no benefit from that. Like if she wanted to be super dramatic about it, she could just light herself on fire, you know? People have lit themselves on fire in order to get attention with their suicide. You know, that is very much a thing that people have done. You could make it in that way.
Yeah. She quietly went out, unlike the first lady, right? In the original Omen, you know, she's very loud. She's like, "It's all for you." And this one, she like mutters it to herself, right? She could have just been like, "Hey," and then like everybody would have looked at her. You know, she didn't need to go to that extreme. Real quick, what did you think of this father, Brennan, compared to the other one? How did you feel like he fared, like playing the same person?
I thought it was okay. Wasn't annoyed in any way. I also wasn't like, oh man, he really encapsulated that performance of the other person or something.
I felt like it was believable, which is good.
Yeah, it was working. It's serviceable.
Yeah. So that's when we kind of find out that the whole thing is that the church itself actually wants to bring the Antichrist back just so that they can bring more people back to the church, which is just hilarious. It's like that we're so good we've wrapped around back to being evil, back to being good again. Like it's such a funny. Okay, here's the thing, right? That is such a funny like idea that you could have paired with the fact that there's this underlying riot happening in town.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, and I wanted to get to that, yeah.
You could have tied that together somehow so much better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not like smart enough in this moment to figure out what the exact like correlation is somewhere, but there's definitely the whole idea of like we're trying to be assholes to make people be good is like that exists in governments around right now all over the world. So they could have tied that into like the riots happening somehow. I don't know. It just felt, I liked the reason. I thought it was funny, but immediately after you have the riots happen, and the riots just feel like there was something else that could have been there that maybe they were gonna add topically and just didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like the riots should have more purpose. Like they also get established very early on within the first minutes. And another one of those where it's like, okay, you set this up and you didn't really do anything with it. It's like this vaguely connected thing of where they say, yeah, the church doesn't have the influence it had at once, and we need to make radical changes. But that's so vague. Yeah, it definitely needed more. It's definitely an underdeveloped side of the plot.
It is a very religious area. So, I mean, like, could people be rioting over like bad religious representation or something? Like, I don't know. It's just not well fleshed out. Really,
Not at
when
all.
it gets
Yeah.
down to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Half-baked idea.
So the riots happen, break out, and then we see Paolo again. And he's like freaked out, tells her to look for the, look for the mark, gets fucking murdered.
What did you think of that murder scene?
I always like a really obvious truck hit is always great.
To me, it was so silly. I don't know.
It's super silly. It's great the first time you ever see one in a movie when somebody steps off the curb and the camera's perfectly framed for it and you don't know what's going to happen, and that happens, you're like, oh my god. And then the next time it ever happens, you're like, I already see what's happening. It's like when you watch Scooby-Doo and they walk up to the bookshelf and they're like, I wonder which book is the one that'll open the door. And you're like, probably the one that's brightly colored compared to the rest of the background. Like, it's very much like that obvious once you know it's coming.
Yeah. I also meant not even like the stepping up of the curb, but the pinning to the wall, like the actual splitting the body in half kind of thing.
Signs got me fucked up with this car pinning. I literally laughed. She's just like, oh no. Like, oh, let me fix this. Let me, and like picks him up off the thing. I fucking laugh. She's just standing there going, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if there was any intention to be funny.
No, there was no intention at all.
I couldn't take it seriously at all.
I think she's meant to be in serious shock.
Yeah, it really just felt
hilarious.
Like a parody of the Signs scene.
It was absolutely. Yeah. I was like, I was like, are we watching Scary Movie now?
Yeah, for real. It felt like the Scary Movie version of him. Yeah, exactly.
Scary Movie 6?
This was exactly my thought. I was like, this is so stupid. God damn it.
I laughed so hard. I was like, this is fucking funny.
Yeah, it was one of the more entertaining parts of the movie, but one of the worst filmmaking parts of the movie.
Absolutely. Speaking of entertaining, let's jump back real quick to hand birth.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about this scene?
Nothing too much. I just wrote it down because it was super intense. I could kind of relate to her fainting. Not that I did, but like that was.
You've also had hands come out of your asshole?
No, but
okay.
I could relate to her fainting, not to her giving birth. To the protagonist, I could relate.
Okay.
To the reaction that she had. Yeah, just great fucking practical effects. What a beautifully shot little moment. Fucking disgusting imagery. Loved it.
As somebody who knows what the real thing is like, it could have looked worse. They could have gone much further. It's so funny. I wrote down, what the fuck kind of painkiller did they give her? Holy shit.
Yeah.
She literally takes like 3 breaths off the thing and is like, oh. I wonder if that's like a callback to like a no longer used, basically would give them brain damage for 5 minutes while they.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
she takes it and just goes out. It's just pure cocaine gas.
Yeah.
Great scene.
Great scene, great practical effects. I love the design of the hand itself. Like it's very uncanny.
My last note pertains to him mentioning Paolo, telling her to look for the mark. Do we ever find out why the fuck he knows anything?
I mean, we get that super weird flashback to the dance floor where we see again that he like
no.
pulled her hair back.
Not that he saw that she had a mark on her head, right? But why that would mean anything to him.
I guess in this universe, everyone already knew that 666 is the devil's number, even before the Omen released in cinemas. No, I don't know. There's not really a good explanation. No, you're absolutely right.
It feels like it's implied that he's part of this, and he's like, fuck, you're the creature, beast, lady. The eternal mystery of how he knows anything, how he's connected in any way. Tells her to look for the mark. She does eventually see said mark. She sees the mark from like 5 feet away on the roof of Carlita's mouth. This might be the dumbest part of the movie for me. Mm-hmm. Like literally the dumbest part.
It's a real life zoom in and enhance.
It literally is. I saw that, and you know what my first thought was? Oh, this is going to be on Tubi soon.
Did we do that joke before we started the recording? I don't know if I can use that now, sadly. I don't think there's any context.
It's not even, that's literally what I thought. I don't know if we were recording earlier, but for those, we were talking shit about Tubi and loving Tubi at the same time. We love Tubi, but making jokes about this Tubi in general. But no, that's literally what I thought, because it's like those movies that are like, there's just that array of like really bad sequels and stuff and shit that it's out there. And this feels like this is just going to fit right in with that stuff, man. And that was the moment that I thought that was that. It's just such a bad scene. Such a bad scene, dude.
It's also kind of unnecessary because they then later on, the discovery of her, of the red herring basically, and of her being the actual mother for Damien, they make that themselves anyways. They wouldn't have needed Paolo to give any hints. That just adds the confusion of why did he know so much? Why is he involved in this so deeply? Without giving any advantage really to further the plot. It's more putting a question mark into the viewer's brain is the only purpose it serves. But that was really not needed. Weird scene. In the end, I like quite a few of the imagery, like the imagery of the nuns lying down and the sound design that accompanies that scene, with them all praying, and it's kind of echoing in various layers, the prayer, with a lot of reverb. That was beautifully filmed and portrayed. I like the whole birth of Damien and I guess Damien's sister that we didn't know of, I think, in like the original Omen movie.
I'm 90% sure that she is in the Omen 4.
Okay.
I think that is about her, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I liked all of those things. I like the body horror in that. I like the staging in the end. I just wanted to point it out. I think like the last 10 minutes or something are some of the strongest of the film. But at the same time, it was more so that I appreciated it, but I was kind of already ticked out and didn't really care for anything anymore. And I more so wanted the movie to be over at this point. So I also couldn't appreciate it to the degree that I would usually appreciate those kind of practical effects, I think.
I enjoyed the last 10 minutes of the film because it signified the end of the film.
Yeah. And yeah, then I just wanted to mainly shout out a few other movies that people should rather watch if they want to watch Christian questioning movies. There's quite a few that explore some similar things that all way better in my opinion than whatever this was. Specifically other modern movies that do that. There's obviously a lot of classics. Paradise Faith is an Austrian drama. It's part of the Paradise trilogy. They all work individually on their own. And that follows, for example, a nun and her struggle with her own desires and her sexual desires in specifically, and how that is in conflict with her faith and how she wants to live out her beliefs. And that's a very intense, so pretty extreme for a drama. It has like some extreme moments. Definitely a drama though. There's First Reformed, the Paul Schrader film from 2017 that is also a drama, but tackles specifically the whole thing that I think they wanted to do here with modern youth not really being close to religion, to Christianity anymore, and how they feel like that their values can't be represented through this old system. It is more a dialogue-driven movie between a priest and a depressed climate activist. That kind of like is, I think, the direction they wanted to go with the whole protest thing here that just never really worked out. And that's incredibly portrayed in First Reformed. Then there's more abstract ways to tackle the whole religion in horror side of things. You have things like the almost Bible First Testament adaptation that is Mother by Darren Aronofsky. You have the super weird abstract working through Antichrist in Antichrist by Lars von Trier. And the movie that I had to think of the whole runtime basically, and is really the movie that people should rather watch if they want to get a movie that tries to explore a lot of these themes, but way better, is Saint Maud. It is the first movie by Rose Glass where we recently talked about Love Lies Bleeding, where in that episode I even mentioned that I have never seen Saint Maud before and I need to get to it quickly. And I was absolutely right. Saint Maud is amazing. It also follows a young nun it also is horror. It also explores stuff like there's also a scene where she goes out partying and she is like sinful in that kind of perspective of Christianity. But all of those things are explored way more interestingly in Saint Maud. Has way more to say than this movie. Super original in its imagery. Yeah, the Saint Maud has a lot of overlap with the first Omen thematically, and it's just in pretty much all aspects the better movie, I think.
Yeah. I think I would say if you like The Omen and you want to see more movies where somebody is switched at birth, better movies would be The Changeling Escape to Witch Mountain on Sundays is much better than this.
Interesting. I don't really think of that as horror, but yeah, it is kind of horrific.
It's a fucking way horrific movie, and it's a fantastic movie people should see. In your next appointment, we're going to stick to horror, but take it in a very different direction, with 2 movies exploring the horror through the TV screen.
The first film on your prescription being the 1983 released David Cronenberg feature, Videodrome. Videodrome explores the effects that violence and gore portrayed on screen has on humanity through the supposed snuff TV channel that is manipulating the minds of its viewers. It stars Sonia Smith, Debbie Harry, and James Woods.
Our second prescription is I Saw the TV Glow, the 2024 horror about 2 friends whose connection to their favorite TV show leads them on to a reality-bending mystery. The film stars Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne and is directed by Jane Schoenbrun.
If you don't want to get spoiled for either of these movies, make sure to check them out by the next episode 4 weeks from now.
I'm still in the process of moving, but the usual schedule should hopefully be on back within episode 18.
Till then, I'm George.
I'm Devyn, and this was your Medicinema.